Hello, welcome to Nyambung, a program to make you click and connect with me, Dinna Praptoraharja, and my co-host, Nadila Amani.
Now that I have learned a little more about multilateralism, maybe should we discuss about regional cooperation in the context of multilateralism, Bu Dinna? ASEAN in particular, because of course we lived in the region, and other than that, I knew that you worked inside of ASEAN for a number of years and have been paying attention to ASEAN for a long time. I'm curious, Bu Dinna, what is the multilateralism look like inside of the ASEAN?
Okay, quick answer to that is that ASEAN is not immune to shocks and compromises that the global community is also experiencing in its multilateralism. So when multilateralism at the global level is being undermined, or Julia Morse and Robert Keohane back in 2014 call it contested multilateralism, which is a situation where member states try to pursue their own strategies to challenge the rule, practices, missions, even the institution is being challenged so that they can get what they want. The situation of multilateralism itself can be compromised. So I would like to highlight how ASEAN is different in terms of multilateralism. Yeah. Inside of ASEAN, basically countries are, coming together. First and foremost is to make sure that the region, Southeast Asia, is stable. And they realize, as member states of ASEAN, that their highest vulnerability is when some member states are persuaded, are made to be against each other and to experience penetration of influence that to the degree that's too much, that's leading to what they often use the term intervention, showing intervention of the regional matters. So ASEAN member states by nature has been very sensitive and quite suspicious to any signals of a potential intervention by foreign countries to countries in the region. That's the context of ASEAN. So in the current context of global engagements, ASEAN member states realize that different countries may get different rewards for what they do at the international level, especially to particular countries that are very eager to enlarge their power at the international levels. To me, this is natural. This is just, common thing that once you see opportunity, then you try to invest more in the relationship with that particular country that profits you. But the consequence of that is that you often forget to look at the bigger picture, that you don't live alone in the region, that the neighbors sitting next to you and not far from you are also getting the impacts of whatever it is that you are trying to get from the external powers. And this is what's been quite difficult inside of ASEAN. If I would say ASEAN after the ASEAN Charter is more and more becoming a sectoral in mindset. They include lots and lots of ministries to make sure that the ASEAN vision is being implemented for member states. But the consequence of that is, because there are so many agencies being involved, decision making can be really, really slow, even slower than how it used to be when ASEAN was still lean. nowadays ASEAN becomes big and fat, and every sectoral bodies require different approach and different pace of making decisions. And of course, that would imply lots and lots of meetings. With lots of meetings, that means more money needs to be spent to finance the activities. But if the money is available, let's say everybody can provide all this necessary financial requirements to come into a deal. The challenge is the timing. Can you make timely decisions given the circumstances that you have to consult so many bodies before you then channel the inputs or recommendations to the one who can make the highest decision in ASEAN is the leadership of ASEAN, the head of government or head of states, with the recommendations from the foreign ministers of ASEAN. That takes a long time, and there may be bottlenecks too. You know, there may be different interpretations once a recommendation come in the hands of foreign ministers. The foreign ministers may have different suggestions as well to the heads of states, heads of governments on what to do. And if the foreign ministers cannot come into a common position, they cannot have consensus on the issue, or they don't realize that it doesn't need consensus, they can just take a ASEAN minus decision, then a swift decision will not be taken at all in ASEAN. So what I'm saying is that multilateralism inside of ASEAN tend to be insensitive to time. Why? Because it depends a lot on the interpretation of different sectors. It requires time to get into the hands of the foreign ministers, and then again to the heads of states level. So it may start as a bottom-up institution, bottom-up procedure, where the sectoral bodies is supposedly taking inputs from civil society, from domestic constituents, but at the end of the day, because it takes so long to process the inputs, process the suggestions coming from people, it becomes a process that can be highly politicized. It can be highly compromised as well, what is being discussed. So in my view, ASEAN should realize these limits and adjust accordingly, so that the multilateralism that is supposed to enhance their work, what is being done in the UN, is supposed to help them relate with member states inside of the region, can actually be a strength instead of limitations. At this point, ASEAN has difficulty in translating back what is being determined or discussed and agreed at the United Nations level to the ASEAN level. Well, the intent initially is to make sure that if you have problems inside of ASEAN, you bring it to the UN level to get support. And then once you get the support, then what can you do something about it fast? So I think this should give you a bit more insights, of the complexity of multilateralism in practice, especially inside of ASEAN. ASEAN is big, and every meeting can take a long day. It varies by styles of people who come to the meeting. So in my own experience, I cannot say that if you work with certain ministry, then the style will be always the same. Not necessarily. And what's interesting is that different sectoral bodies have their own styles. They also have different schedules of meeting. Some meets every month, others meet once every 18 months. So they barely meet, not even once a year. So if your issue affect or if your issue requires decisions from that sectoral bodies, that means a very long time to expect to finish things up. And so issues like Myanmar, for instance, it has to go through many doors inside of ASEAN. Foreign ministers, yes, and then for humanitarian assistance, you go to the AHA Center, but for issues of human rights, you should go to ICHAR, for instance. Not to mention that the involvement of sectoral bodies such as the Defense Ministry, because the issue is now expanding to the issue of arms and weapons and security, which is not necessarily the domain of the Foreign Ministry. So it can be made more complex if ASEAN think like how usually ASEAN work in a peaceful situation. So this is a time for ASEAN to start thinking that to start acting, not just thinking. I would say, I repeat myself, ASEAN should start acting differently, separating procedure during peaceful time and procedure during crisis. What we are observing at this point is situation under crisis. So please do not take positions or procedures that require similar timing as and actions as regular business as usual.
Please do not take your time, ASEAN.
We don't have time.
Do not take your time. Bu Dinna, I agree so much. It seems so complex, especially sometimes not even the MOFA, right, Bu Dinna? Even like these countries need to get approval from their leader of the countries, that make it highly politicized. And when the leader of the countries tell something, it make their image different, make the relationship between the countries differ. It's so complex, it seems like.
But at least you can understand a bit more, right, about differentiating the positions of countries and the different contexts, right?
Bu Dinna, of course, like every discussion with you, I'm more enlightened. I feel like this is my weekly class. I feel like I need to pay for this class, and yet I'm getting it free. I feel so grateful, Bu Dinna. So thank you deeply.
It's still it's free for everybody. I like to share ideas and experience. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much for your support once again. Our podcast is available at YouTube and Spotify at Nyambung with Dinna Praptora Harja. Make sure to send us your questions or your thoughts through YouTube comment section. And if you enjoy the episode, don't forget to like, share the link to your community, and subscribe so you make sure you don't miss our contents because we post every week.